Welcome, everybody, to the Internet Writing Buddies podcast. Taking the helm of the ship today is yours truly, Grace, aka the Graceful Renegade. And opposite me is the wonderful Dork in the Road, aka Ben. And what was it? Splendiferous is my word. Yeah, the
Yeah.
splendiferous Ben. But today we are going to be turning the tables on what we did last week, and I am going to be interviewing Ben with my own hard hitting questions about just who is the man behind the dork in the road. Ben, are you ready for this?
Well, so this isn't. Let's just clarify. It's not some self-indulgent, self-masturbatory thing where we just decide that all you need to know about is us. I think it's important to both of us that you have the background information and to understand who the people are that are talking to you, so that you can decide whether our opinions and thoughts are even relevant to you. So, I think it's useful to get the background information. I think it's fun to interview each other and get to know your friends a little better.
Yeah.
And so we want you to have that background info. So when all the future episodes come out, you know
Yeah, this
whether
isn't
we're full
about
of crap or
inflating
not.
egos or us talking about ourselves. This is merely a an effort that Ben and I decided to make because there are actually newer people tuning into the podcast who don't really know that much, especially about me, but there's also a lot of people that have been following Ben for a while and don't have a big background on who he is, how he got into ADV riding or motorcycles in general, and how he got to be where he is with 100,000 followers on YouTube
And
and
zero
just
Emmys.
blowing up in the motorcycle community. So we thought it would be good just to give everybody a little bit of background info, just so you know who we are, you know what kind of people we are, and if you hate us, you don't have to listen. So thanks for being here. Ben, do you want to start by talking about the little off-road incident you had yesterday?
Hmm. Yeah. I'm out. I got my first press bike. Big deal. Waiting forever for that to happen. So I have a Moto Morini X Cape 650 in the garage that I've been testing. I've had it for about a month because the weather turned crappy, and so I couldn't ride it for like a week and a half in there. And yesterday I took it out for its final exam, which was a half day ish, multi surface. The idea being, this is the type of adventure that I feel like most newer adventure riders, or a lot of experienced adventure riders even, will take. They'll do, an hour or so or more of pavement, get into the woods from some exploring, forest road things, whatever, and then hit the pavement and come home. And so there's a really great loop out here that goes out around Mary's Peak, which is the tallest mountain in the Coast Range. I was a little concerned there'd be snow. There wasn't. So about, 2/3 pavement and a third gravel. So I was out doing that, having a great time filming, had both cameras running, fortunately. And at one point, this is all going to go on my video too. I'm totally going to make fun of myself. But I was like, oh, I'm feeling really confident on this thing. I could hop on a log. Maybe there'll be like a 4-inch log in the road I can hop over later. I bet I could totally crush it. And 10 minutes later, I come around the corner and there's a 4-inch log across the road, all the way across. Now, keep in mind, we're in wet, slippery, it's Pacific Northwest rainforest, and the road is covered in those freaking fir needles as they start to decompose. It's like the slipperiest stuff, and it's on those damn Pirelli tires that I just can't get away from. Anyway, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to show you guys how much you can do on this bike, whatever. Not a huge obstacle. I've done it 1,000 times, but came up to the log, and I was scanning it as I was riding up about 20, 30 miles an hour, looking for the place with the fewest pokey branches, because the last thing I want to do is put a hole in the tire and have to deal with all of that out there. And the problem is, I found the spot I wanted, but it was in the other tire track from where I was. So already I'm coming at it at a bad angle, and it was angled away from me anyway. And I slowed down to try and see what the condition of the log was, and then did not accelerate when I got to the log. I tried to roll over it, and so I had compressed the front suspension, did not decompress it to where it could bounce. So I hit the log, the tire slid down a few inches, and the bike just went sideways underneath me. You can see in the slow motion replay that I almost went all the way off the bike on the left. Like, I came off the peg. Like, everyone's like, "Is your leg broken?" No, I didn't bang it on the ground too hard, but somehow, and this is pedestrian accomplishment to some, but damn, I'm pretty proud of it. Somehow I had the presence of mind as I was careening toward the ditch out of control I dabbed, got back on the pegs, and got on the brakes. And while I didn't have a chance to turn, I rode it all the way down into the ditch and managed to get it stopped in the ditch. And you know, when something crazy happens and the adrenaline kicks in, it seems like it takes forever. Like I had this whole thought process,
Yeah.
like, okay, get back up on the pegs. Okay, you're doing good. You're riding. You're not crashing yet. Oh my God, keep riding, keep trying. You can do it. Okay, are you
Yeah.
braking? That's only the rear brake. Use the front brake. And then I stop and I just throw my head back and laugh. And I'm just like, 2 years ago, I would have bailed on that immediately, been like, oh, I'm crashing. And there's so many videos of that on my channel where it's pretty clear now that if I just kept riding, I'd have been fine.
Yeah.
So I was just pretty stoked and pretty lucky because the ditch was only about 3 or 4 feet deep and it was a pretty smooth slope, all grass. So I managed to ride it back out, which was good because that was the next
Yeah.
concern because it's not a light bike. But so all that'll be in the video. This is you know, if you're going to sum up the Dork in the Road channel in one incident, here I am rambling on about all this sort of nitpicky, in-depth stuff, and the next thing you know, I crash. That's how I roll. That's how I run my channel.
That's a great way to start to talk about how did you get into adventure motorcycle riding?
Oh man. Well, you want the long version or the short version? Let's do
Well,
the medium version.
medium. Yeah.
Yeah.
Medium's good.
So, well, similar to our friend here, I had an interest in motorcycling from a young age. My dad always had motorcycles, and I was not forbidden from having one, unlike our friend here. But so at 16, now at 17, because back then you had to wait a year after you got your license. My dad paid for me to get my endorsement, and I took the class and I did the on the bike and I got my endorsement. And we had a motorcycle we were rebuilding, working on, and I was going to put it together and it was going to be my bike. Well, that sort of worked, but didn't. And then there was title issues. And long story short, I never got a bike. And I always wanted one, but it was like, it was always too expensive or too much hassle. And I don't think I
Yeah.
understood. It wasn't as expensive. It isn't as expensive as I thought it was, but I don't know if I had the money anyway. Anyway, a long, long time goes by. Like I'm suddenly 38 years old. And my buddy, Duck Fan, one day is just like, hey, I'm going to well, he used to ride too. He rode in college, but hadn't for a long time. And one day he's like, so I'm headed to Reading tomorrow to pick up a Ducati, you know, my dream bike, the bike I've always wanted. And I was like, what? And so he gets this bike, and it's awesome, sweet bike, like a '93 Super Sport, you know, his dream bike, the one he's always wanted. And well, it wasn't long before that made me remember things and
Yeah.
started having conversations with the family. And then next thing I knew, there was a CB500F in the garage because I set out to buy a 300F thinking this would be the easiest, but it just wasn't great. The 500F was a lot better. And I had a lot of fun on that bike, but I kept like taking it on gravel roads and trying to do other stuff. And I started watching too much Everride, so I bought. And I started thinking about when I was a kid. I'm a teenager. Like I lived in Sweet Home, Oregon, so at the base of the Cascades, and all we did was go drive in the woods and party in the woods. And like I always had a Toyota pickup, and I was always just like, "What's up that road? What's up that road?" And I had forgotten that, and it kind of came back to me as I was watching these Everride videos and thinking about how cool it would be to go out and do that again on two wheels, especially living, you know, nearby in such a cool place with so many opportunities. And so a
Yeah.
lot of fast talking because we weren't, you know, I was a teacher and my wife works for the state. We're not like drowning in excessive disposable income, but somehow convinced her to let me get a second bike. I had started the channel at this point, but literally like I was 3 months in. I hadn't made a dime, right? Um,
Right.
and brought home a 250L, and woo, it was all downhill from there. So that's how I
Yeah.
got into adventure riding, and then I've just all of it is so fun and amazing. I just want to try all the other aspects. So it's like such a dual sport is such a gateway drug. It's like, well, now I want to go adventure touring. I want to ride a BDR. I want to ride dirt
Yeah.
bike trails. I want to fly to Canada and ride to the top of a freaking glacier. Like, it's crazy how your horizons expand quickly when you're passionate about something.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so quickly before we obviously motorcycling is a big part of your life, but I want to tap into who you were before you were a dork in the road because I don't think a lot of people know that side of you. And I think it's super important for people to understand that you're obviously a multifaceted human being and there's a lot of aspects of your personality that are awesome and also why you are the way you are. So if you could touch on teaching, theater, all the stuff, just kind of give everybody a little bit of background about where you were at before motorcycles took over your life.
So did you just ask me why are you the way that you are? Why are you like this?
Maybe.
Um, yeah. Well, I'll give you what's relevant in the short version, but I went to college right out of high school, but not very seriously. I worked retail for a long time, 10 years, and then um, I was a manager at Hollywood Video, and then eventually EB Games, which is now GameStop, and I thought I was always like, I kind of want to go back to college, but it's hard. I can't afford it. Whatever. Well, 2005. What year was it? The Xbox 360 came out. Either way, we had a bunch of pre-orders, and
I just want to quickly interrupt and say the fact that that is how you're knowing what year it is says a lot.
it's
Anyway, continue.
relevant to the story, but I wouldn't have done it anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, it because we took a bunch of pre-orders for it and then got a call and they were like, just kidding, you're only getting half as many. And my district manager was like, and you can't give them to the people who were pre-ordered for first. You only can give them to the people that pre-ordered the most accessories. And so I had to call these people. Some of them had been sitting on pre-orders for a year and just be like, yeah, you're not getting one. Second shipment maybe. And it was just like the most soul-crushing experience of my life. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? I
Yeah.
hate this job. And quit. Went back to college. Got my English degree because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, and then I was like, the only thing I'm really passionate about is writing and literature, so I'm going to do that because I know I'll finish. I don't care what the prospects are when I'm done. I know this is something I'll stick with. And then last semester of undergrad rolls around, or last couple semesters, and I'm like, shit, what am I going to do now? Never wanted to be a teacher. Was like, there's teachers in my life. My stepmom's a teacher. My best friend in high school's mom was a teacher. And the last thing I ever wanted to be was a teacher because all I heard was how bad it is, how hard it is, all this. But I took this class my last semester, teaching of writing, because I was like you, thinking about going into the MFA program, trying to get my master's and be a college professor.
Yeah.
Because that seemed better than high school to me. And so I took this class and I don't know, it's like something in me, a switch flipped. And I was like, teaching wouldn't be that bad. And I started talking to a lot of people. I was just thinking about all these things I love to do, right? I've been doing improv and acting since I was in high school, so I could teach that thing that I really like. And I could spend all day talking about books with an audience that doesn't give a shit, but I could try to make them care. And so I decided to go to teaching school. So I got my MAT. My brother and I went at the same time, actually. We graduated the same, and he's 8 years younger than me, so this is how long I screwed around. I used to tell kids, it took me 11 years to get my associate's degree, because I stopped in the middle for like 8 years.
Yeah.
So I worked for the school district for 10 years, English and theater, took over a theater program, and put on the most successful shows in the history by far, because I moved us to a different venue where we had a lot more space for audience. We had a great time. Eventually switched to working at the district office, and then started this thing while I was teaching. Started YouTubing in 2017 while I was teaching. Just like I was watching videos, and I was like, this seems like something I could do. And
Yeah.
it eventually became more than that.
That's
what am I forgetting?
Pretty.
Improv, acting, teaching, all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, one of the reasons why Ben and I originally realized we were gonna become friends is because I think it was the first giant loop ride we were at together, Ben, when we sat down and
it was ADV Fest.
One of us made a Shakespeare reference and the other one knew what it was, and it was just
you're right.
We both looked at each other like, wait, what just happened? And next thing you know, we realized we're both English lit nerds, and that was the beginning and end of that. All right. I guess a lot of these questions, I kind of want to tap into more of your stuff before we dive into the social media stuff. But you've obviously been in in Western Oregon for quite some time. What traveling have you done with motorcycles? This will obviously segue into talking about motorcycles and content, but what traveling have you done with motorcycles that you've really enjoyed and that you would recommend for people, especially when they're not wanting to do the really, really gnarly shit? What would you recommend for a beginning, touring ADV type of thing that you've really enjoyed doing?
Well, it's worth mentioning that I've lived in Oregon my whole life, like you said, and I never really had much desire to travel. I've always been a stuff person and not an experiences person, because you spend all this money on an experience and you have nothing to show for it. But if I buy a toy, I have the toy at least. And so motorcycling was one of the things that really shifted that for me, and my eyes have been open, and I've really come to enjoy traveling. I actually look forward to I don't love it when I'm driving for 10 hours in a row, like in the moment, but like
Nobody
there's
does.
something really romantic and like kind of freeing about it. Cause it's like, I want to stop to take a piss. I can. So my point is, this is coming from a person who was reluctant. I'm not like Grace, where I'm like, I think I'll just screw off to Vietnam for 2 months. I don't know. That's not me, and it never has been.
Yeah.
So it depends. I think there's two ways into this to answer your question. The first is the simplest, and it's just like I always say, work up to, you start small. So if you're not comfortable sleeping outside, go rent a cabin or a yurt and drive there if you want to. If you want to ride there, great. If you don't even feel comfortable sleeping somewhere other than home, spend a day riding, go out somewhere. I always find that things are a lot more welcoming and less intimidating when you go look at them. So
Yeah.
I hate camping at a campground I've never seen. I'll do it when it's far afield or whatever, but like there are good spots and bad spots, and I want to see them. And I also just can really picture it better in my mind. So the easiest way is to ease into it. Start, you could literally pitch a tent in your backyard if you're not sure what it's like to sleep in a tent, because if it sucks, you just go inside. But camp nearby, and then maybe try a double night or a 2-nighter, maybe in the same
Yeah.
place, right? Set up a base camp and go ride during the day, and then branch out to like multi-day. Like my first multi-day camping off a motorcycle trip was 3 years ago. And then the following year, I did the Washington BDR. So that is if you want to do it from on your own,
Yeah.
and less expensive, I would start that way. However, if you want to jump right in and know that you're fully supported and you're going to get the full immersive experience, and I know it's kind of a bougie answer because these tours are not cheap, but there are reputable, awesome companies offering these experiences, all inclusive in some cases. I think I can say this because it is going to be public knowledge by the time this episode comes out, but I'm working with Traction E-Rag, the company that did the Grisbait ride I went to last year, to put together an introductory training adventure experience camp out in BC. So that'll be this August, and it is, sorry, you weren't trying to set me up for a plug, and I'm not trying to. It's just a good example because it's on my mind. We literally met this morning. So it's 5 days camping in nice glamping tents, mornings of instruction the first 3 days, afternoons of trail riding, and then 2 days of just we're out there shredding single track in BC. Bikes included, lodging's included, your flight is included, transportation is included, every meal is included. So if you have no idea where to start, and you understand that all those things cost money, right? It's not cheap.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a way to come get your feet wet, because the whole point is that all the instruction and the rides will be tailored to the group. So not only
Yeah.
is that, but also you're going to get training every morning and then go practice the things. So it's really hard to get in and over your head on sort of an experience like that. Another
Yeah.
option is like Baja. That's crazy. It's a long ways away. There's a whole cultural thing too that you have to be into, but you can do tours like that locally. Companies
Yeah.
do that. Or go to a rally. That's another great place to. Camping is less involved. There's food right there, but you can get a sense of the community. And I think the great thing is once you get dip your toe into the community, you see
Mm-hmm.
kind of how supportive it is, and things are a lot less scary.
Yeah.
You're likely to take risks, but I guess there's two options: work up to it on your own, or take a tour, or have a friend that can help ease you into it because they have more experience.
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive though either. I think being
No, they're
able to
not.
work into it slowly, and the big thing is, and I know this does come up for a lot of people, and I'm sorry I'm taking over your interview shortly, but we'll get over that in a minute.
I expect
But
no less.
I think it's just important to note too that like not everybody's going to have like the terrain we have here, and I'm so sorry
Mhm.
for you, but you know, being able to find friends to go ride with you and kind of get you out of your comfort zone so that you are comfortable traveling and riding is like a great first step for sure. And then doing bigger trips, like when I did Iceland for 10 days, I had never ridden a motorcycle in another place that wasn't mine ever. And we camped. It was definitely jumping into the deep end of the pool, and it takes a certain personality to do that. So definitely maybe don't start there, but just do know that like you can do some of these tours and they're amazing. People will take care of you and you'll have a great time. All right, back to Ben, the Dork in the Road, the beauty behind the podcast. All right, so um so let's talk about your day to day, because obviously you have a lot of things you're doing consistently. You're getting videos out every week, you're reviewing products, you're going on rides. So why don't you talk about what goes into the media you're creating, what your kind of to-do list is just to even get through the week, and what you really enjoy most about the content you're creating.
Okay, well, like all things, there's no such thing as a typical day. Like at least
Yeah.
these types of shall we say, non-traditional. When I worked at Safeway, I was like, I stood in the check stand for 4 hours, took a break, stood in the check stand for 4 hours, went home. It's not like that anymore. So in the typically morning, I try to get some coffee, answer emails. I usually put a video up Mondays and actually every day, actually Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays now at 8 a.m. I stopped scheduling them because one, I like the fun of putting them up, and two, that way channel members and patrons can watch them early. When they're scheduled, they can't. It's stupid. YouTube, change that.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then watch the comments roll in, kind of respond the first hour or so. I try to, and then in the at least in the winter, in the mornings, that's when I like to do my editing. I'm more productive then, and it's colder. So if I'm gonna ride, I would rather do it in the afternoon, and that all
Yeah.
just depends. Because sometimes it's like I'm going camping and I woke up in a campsite or whatever. But editing takes up a lot of my time. You think it's all riding and having a good time, and it's not even half that, honestly. But it's all worth it because I get to have to go do those things. Like yesterday was great. I woke up, edited, and then went out and rode and crashed the demo bike almost. Came home and pulled the footage, post on social media, whatever. Once a week we record a podcast in the morning, and then I got to edit that and get it all put up. And lots of just kind of conversation. You probably have this because you're kind of a freelancer on your own too. There's days when you're like, how was I feel like I was busy all day. Like I didn't screw around. And yet I don't think I accomplished anything. It was just like I'm answering emails and, researching brand deals and maybe writing a script or something in there. But it's just like I was so busy and I have, what did I do? But it's all that kind of busy work stuff that has to get done, right? I clean up the garage, whatever. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and I think that you asked about how I keep everything rolling, you know, COVID was a bad thing obviously in a lot of ways, but there were some good things that came out of it. And I think the best thing for me was putting together a schedule for working from home. Like
Yeah.
I get up at the same time I used to. I'm at my computer the same time I used to be because it just kind of worked that I was doing that while I was working from home, and I just
Yeah.
kept doing it. So I try to work 7:30 or 8 to 4 every day. If I work much past 4, my wife yells at me because when your hobby is your job, it's really easy to just not stop. And
Yeah.
so it's become very important to her that I stop working and start playing video games or something else, which is funny.
Yeah.
She's like, you need to go play video games. Stop playing, which is not what you
Yeah.
hear
Tara's
often.
kind of the most awesome human ever. So yeah.
Yeah.
Lucky man, Ben.
Yeah, right. We're good for each other that way.
Yeah.
But so just kind of, I think I talked about this in my video about what I've learned on the way to 100K. It's like it has to be a job if you're going to be successful. It
Yeah.
can't be something you do when you feel like it. It has to get done. A video has to be done. So every week, I always make sure I'm a week ahead. I like to be more than that. And if I'm not, it stresses me way out. And that's the same with the giant loop videos that I make. I need to have them done a week ahead of time. So
Yeah.
4 videos a week at least have to happen. Usually if I get a video done in a day, I feel pretty good about it. And then I kind of feel like I can slow down for the rest of the day, but it depends.
What do you think? This just piggybacks right off this. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions about being a content creator and making videos at the capacity that you do?
It's a good question because I think I mentioned on your interview, I'm going to career day in a month or so. And I think the biggest thing I want these kids to understand is that there's a lot of work involved, a lot of time involved. Set up my computer a lot. So that's one misconception. It's like, it's not just all going out and having fun and doing adventures. I mean, there's a lot of great perks, right? Like I got, free trip to Canada. Like I got to go to Mexico. I don't buy gear. In fact, I've given away all the gear I've paid for because it just seems a waste for it to sit there in the closet when I get this other stuff. I try to pay things like that forward where I can, but
Yeah.
a lot of advantages. But I think the other misconception people have is one that I make a ton of money, that I'm just like swimming in cash. Like I make as much as I used to as a teacher, a little more, but not drowning. I always say they're always like, "You have a lot of bikes, you must make a lot of money," and it's like, no, I just make poor financial decisions. That's what I do. Like it's called loans. I got to
Yeah.
make content, and that I have access to all these things. Like I'm literally like, no shit. This is not some persona I've affected. I'm just a dude in his basement, like literally right now. I'm just a guy. I don't have access to manufacturers. I don't have access to demo bikes. I probably could get better access to demo bikes if I lived in California, where most of them have their headquarters. But
Yeah.
literally, the Marini in the garage is the first time I've ever gotten access to a press bike, and I appreciate that people think that like I'm this big like thing that someone's like review the V-Strom. I get that one all the time. How? Like I have to buy one to review it. I can't just they don't give them to me. I could maybe test ride one at a dealership just like you, or the whole Honda Transalp thing. Like, oh well, if I had a hookup like you, it's like, dude, I called every dealership within 200 miles trying to
Yeah.
get that thing. Like, I didn't call and say hi. This is Dork in the road. I did try to pull that card. I was like trying to get in touch with a Honda contact through a mutual contact, and I was like, can you just help me get my hands on one? Tell me when I'm paying for it. I'm not looking for, but
Right.
none of that materialized. One time, I always have to throw this out there. I did get not a discount, but I got the first call when a Tenere became available because the dealership knew I would make a video. And so if
Yeah.
somebody was going to buy it, it's like a fringe benefit, whatever.
Yes.
That's the only time though. So I think big misconceptions that it's not just all fun and games, and that I'm still just a dude. Like doors open more than they used to, for sure. And and I have the confidence and the track record to be able to suggest things and be able to make those connections and to confidently say, you know, if you were to send me this product, I know this many people would be interested in it, and blah 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 blah. I think it's
Yeah.
a good fit because I have a reach and an audience, which is great, and I love and appreciate that people trust me, especially with their money and their purchasing decisions. But I don't have unlimited reach. I'm not Spurgeon, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a huge misconception. And like that was so transparent and prevalent when the Transalp thing happened. Like the amount of just like you're only getting these bikes because you're influencers or whatever else thing was so crazy to me, especially because it obviously hit you and Ian way harder than it hit me. But it was just funny to kind of watch that unfold and realize that I think that is something that a lot of people don't realize is one, how much work it is to do something like this, because you are working your ass off and it's not just riding in the woods and having a good time. But two, like it's not, you don't just make a phone call and magic happens. Like it's not like you just call
Right.
Honda and they're like, yeah, we'll have it there in 2 days. Like it's like, no, it's just, that's not the world we live in. So kind of rolling with that, you have built, I guess, a channel really around yourself for kind of being like the everyman that rides, the kind of the average guy who loves to get out and rip around. And so I want to talk about, it's been kind of an interesting year. We've had some friends get hurt. We've had
Yeah.
some interesting things that have happened within our kind of more immediate community where that's been a little bit interesting. So keeping those things in mind of loving to get out on motorcycles and rip around versus also understanding that like this is like a job and there's a risk factor involved. Talk about how that feels and kind of how that impacts you with this really being like your job and who you are.
Yeah. If I get hurt, I can't work.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of can. Like, I can remember what products were like and review them. But I need to be able to ride for the most part to keep this train rolling.
Yeah.
And so that is in my head a lot. I probably not as much as it should be because I have, learned things the hard way. I have been very lucky. Like Trav has had an exceptional run of bad luck in the last year, over a year, and I have been exceptionally lucky because almost any of the things that happened to him, it could have been me. There's no
Yeah.
reason why it was him with heat stroke and not me, right? Except he was on a heavier bike, and apparently I just abandoned him to die. So that's what I'm told in the comments. Things like that. I could have broken my leg in Canada. It's just a dice roll, and so
Yeah.
that stuff, just and being there and seeing it happen, and you know that I've seen 3 broken legs now. I've been there in person, 2 on camera, 1 not. And so like that is the kind of thing that has sort of pushed me towards, for example, lighter adventure bikes. I mean, the Trans Alba is not light, but it's not my Africa Twin, and easier
Yeah.
to control. And honestly, I think the plan going forward there is I am not going to do anything more than moderately difficult on adventure bikes much at all. I got a dirt bike for that stuff. And just
Yeah.
always wearing my gear is important. And just also safety things. Like I have a family, right? Like I'm not 22 years old out there on my own, just like sending it all the time. You know, it's always wearing my inReach, always tell my wife where I'm going to be riding because I don't want to be out there all night, like, because they're searching the whole forest because I got
Yeah.
crashed in the ditch and like I need to narrow it down for them. So that's all very important. And just really thankful for what I have and starting to kind of plan for the future too, because what you have to understand about this industry, whatever social media, whatever it is, like YouTube could change their algorithm and everything goes away.
Yeah.
And so it's important to have savings, have financial plans, right? You can't take the money for granted, especially when it's seasonal. Like this is the
Yeah.
worst time of the year. Like January hits and it's like I'm in all these YouTuber groups and you know, Discord and everything, and January hits and everyone's like, "Where'd all my money go?" Like every year
Yeah.
because the ad spend is bigger on the holidays and it goes down, and it's doubly bad for us because our industry is seasonal, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
understanding that, saving and planning ahead for it, and you know, insurance is sort of important, and just making sure that diversifying is another big one. So it's why you
Yeah.
see why I'm so grateful to Giant Loop and for the opportunity to run their channel, because I have friends in the YouTube industry with 10 times, 8 times the following I have that are jealous of me because my income doesn't change the way that theirs does every month because I have a steady paycheck. So
Yeah.
that I've been that's so lucky, not only because of that, but also because I was able to jump ahead, right? Like I'm
Right.
probably making enough now off my channel that I could live off it alone, but it's taken me this long to get there. So I really,
Yeah.
Giant Loop gave me a 2-year head start, which is amazing when your dreams start coming true. But I
Yeah.
feel like I rambled there for a while, but be
No,
safe,
it's great.
plan for
Yeah.
the future, and understand that I understand. And please, if I ever forget this, punch me in the face that I'm stupid lucky. I'm very lucky that I get to
Yeah.
do this. I'm very lucky that I'm healthy enough to do this. And that's the other thing I'm doing this year is, you know, and thank you all for the comments on my video. Like, I know I'm fat. Thanks. I don't need you to tell me. Believe me, I'm aware. You pointing it out is not going to break the glass of my disillusion. I look in the mirror every day and know that it's not as easy as just lose weight, but I'm trying really hard this year. And you know, mental health factors in here, right? It's easier when you're in a
Yeah.
good place and harder when you're not. But I don't want to go to Canada and get my ass kicked again. And I understand that in the shape that I'm in, that I have been in, that's the other thing. I've been super lucky because I'm in no shape to hike out if I'm
Yeah.
10, 12 miles up in the woods. Like I'm not. And
Yeah.
that's not safe, right? How am I supposed to help someone else if I can't help myself? So that's the other thing is I'm trying to work on is like, if I want to keep doing this long term, I need to take care of myself better, and so that I don't put myself or anyone else in a position where my inability physically negatively impacts them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into talking about how you deal with comments and people sometimes. Because obviously, like, being the influencer and the content creator that you are, you deal with a lot of different opinions about what you're doing, about who you are from people you don't know you. And again, like you were just saying, like people making comments about how you look or where you're at with your appearance that they have no business sharing. So, talk a little bit about kind of, I guess, how that affects you, how you deal with it, and what kind of headspace you've been
You're
able to
freezing
kind
on
of
me.
manage.
You're
Oh,
freezing on me.
am I frozen too,
Your
or just you?
computer is the worst. There we go.
Hold on.
Sorry. Talk a little bit about how that affect.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought you just froze again. Oh my god, I was like, fuck. No, just talk about like how dealing with all those things like impacts you. What kind of headspace you've been able to kind of get yourself into to deal with people at this capacity, at the capacity you have to, and just kind of what that takes when you are in this type of realm. Like, because I mean, I don't care what anybody says. If you have over 100,000 people that follow you on a diligent basis, which you do, like, you have to deal with a lot of different bullshit. And I think it's just important for people to understand that, like, it's not an easy thing. So touch on that a little bit if you can.
This is a hard question. You're taking advantage of our friendship because it gives you an insight into the real deep. But it's not something I've talked about. But well, let me start with a story. So I told you that I have watched Everride for a long time. Huge fan of Everride's channel. The biggest inspiration to me to both start writing and start making content. Like huge, massive impact. I always say that. So if you haven't followed him, I love the guy. And one thing
Yeah.
he's really great about is being super open about mental health and imposter syndrome and depression and all these things that he really struggles with. Like,
Yeah.
and so he's an inspiration on that level too, because he's in this industry where weakness is often pounced upon, and
Yeah.
you're not respected for being honest. You're vilified or whatever. He's always been open and honest about how reactions to his content have been. And I remember when I was small, 10,000, like looking up to him like this golden god, like that. Sorry, he would not appreciate that reference as a Mormon. So let me take that back. Looking up to him as a very inspirational leader in our
Yeah.
community. And thinking, he gets these negative comments and they would really affect him. And I'd be like, why does that affect you, dude? Like, you're
Yeah.
clearly awesome. What you're doing is great. People are watching it. You're getting all this positive feedback. Why do one or two comments affect you? Why do you let it affect you? Right? Like,
Yeah.
and now I'm on the other side of that, and I totally get it,
Yeah.
because I should be able to look at the people saying things like, "Oh my God, thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for helping me find the courage to go out and buy my first bike, and understand that not every adventure has to be spectacular. Just it's enough to get out and do the thing." All the time, I get those comments all the time. I love those comments. Please keep them coming. But I won't focus on that. I'll focus on, not that I ignore your comments, but like what gets in my head and echoes around in there is the one or two negative comments. It's because I don't, like I said, I've said it 5 times already. I know I'm lucky. I know I'm just a random dude who, I have worked hard. I'll admit that, but I'm also just lucky to be here. 1,000 factors could have gone one way or another, and I could not be. And
Yeah.
so I have imposter syndrome. I don't consider myself an authority. It's why I'm so big on like kind of sharing who I am, because I need you to know that maybe I'm full of shit and you shouldn't listen to me. Like, don't buy things based on just what I say, but if
Yeah.
my perspective is helpful, great. So when when I get those comments, even if it's something I know about, right, that I know isn't true, I'm like, man, am I? Or at least am I coming across that way? Is that,
Yeah.
do I seem like an idiot? Oh my God. Like drunken buffoon. Like I got that one, gotten that one a few times, because
Yeah. Whatever.
I always drink when and when I am drunk, I am kind of a buffoon. But everyone does that. Like, whatever. So how do
Yeah,
I deal with it?
myself included, by the
Yeah.
way. I love to
It
drink bourbon by the fire and get a little lit up. It is a blast. Anyway,
yeah,
continue, Ben.
the difference is I leave it in, because I'm not concerned with looking
It's true.
cool.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you know that I'm bad at something. I don't care if you know that I do stupid. Like the last video, I smoked a cigar backwards because I had it in my hand and I didn't, somehow got it flipped around, didn't notice it's on camera. I left it in. Like, whatever. It's just stupid. Um, I don't care about that, but I don't love it when you point it out.
Yeah.
Because I know, trust me, I know. And I shouldn't even be saying this, because all it does is feed the trolls and encourage people, because they're like, oh, I can get to him. But it really does.
Yeah.
And I've been in some, again, whiny influencer who's making money living his dream. I get it. But there is a flip side to this, and you're just constantly under the microscope. And like that video I posted on my crash, like everyone's breaking it down. Like, don't you know you're supposed to square up when you go over a log? Yeah, you got a 12-second clip. You don't
Yeah.
know what happened, but
Yeah.
comments are good, right? So there are times when I have to remove myself entirely from the comments. It seems to always happen in about September, October, where, and I don't think I have seasonal depression, but it's just the season winds down and I've been so busy and everything finally catches up. And it's like, I'm
Yeah.
not home a week in a row in the summer at all, like hardly. And so I'm just
Yeah.
busy. But I just, like this last year, I just did not look at comments.
Yeah.
And you would think that being able to see 10 positive comments to one negative one, but as your channel grows, it's not about the percentage, it's about the number, right? And so there's
Yeah.
even more sort of trolly people that don't get it, or are jealous or angry or in some way feel like I don't deserve this, and so they need to tell me so that I know. Or honestly, people's lives are just so damn miserable right now. Everything is
Yeah.
harder than it needs to be. Everything went to shit during COVID, and a lot of it never got better. And
Yeah.
like, go to a fast food place right now, no one's having fun, and the service isn't good, so the customers aren't having fun either. Everything sucks, and so when you see someone else having a good time, that doesn't feel good, and so sometimes you feel the need to try to make
Yeah.
them feel bad because you don't feel good. But
Yeah.
it's not easy to deal with when you're. I would consider myself a sensitive person,
Yeah.
um, an empathetic person, and not an outrageously self-confident person. So
Yeah.
I tend to respect other people's opinions, even when maybe I shouldn't. I'm like, well, gee, I mean, if someone thinks that, either I'm coming across that way or it must be a little bit true, instead of just being
Yeah.
like, you're dumb. But if it were flipped, I see those comments on Everride's video, I'm like, that guy's an idiot. Why would you listen to him? He's
Yeah.
obviously wrong. But I can give that advice, but I can't take it.
Oh, but that's all of us because regardless of how thick of skin you get after a certain period of time, like dealing with comments like that. I mean, I get one or two occasionally, and I have such a hard time with it.
Yeah, and I
And
have zero qualms about laying into someone who's talking crap on your stuff
oh,
because
ditto. Also, by the
they're idiots.
way, if you guys are gonna talk shit on Ben's page for any reason, I will come after you,
Those people aren't
hardcore.
listening. Those people
And
aren't listening.
I know you're not listening, but I'm just gonna let you know now. You will get a comment from me because I that's actually something that I have a hard time with social media. And I know you do too, Ben. It's just that lack of accountability and people taking their own frustrations of things out on other people. It's just not okay. So,
It's true.
yeah.
I've
Well,
talked way too much. I think you've done 4 questions and we have like less than 10 minutes left.
that's okay.
My bad.
This is also going to be a big question, but it kind of is something. Just it's what do you live by? Like your being good to each other vibe is something that comes into every episode you do, every video you make. Talk about why that's important to you and how that's something you kind of live in your day to day, even not in a motorcycle realm. Like just talk about your mission statement and why it means so much to you.
It's a good question, and it was a part of who I was as a teacher too, I think, and why I was into teaching. But it doesn't have to be some mystical spiritual force. You don't have to call it karma if you don't want to. You don't have to call it God or whatever. But um, I just firmly believe that, one, I've seen evidence that if you try to help people and put good energy out in the world, and it comes back to you one way or another, whether because you're just a person that people trust and want to help when you need help, or because if everyone did that, then how awesome would the world be if we all just like were trying to be helpful and unselfish. Not that I'm never
Yeah.
selfish, but I really want, I never want people to feel bad in the ways that I have felt bad in my life. Like
Yeah.
kids, when I was a teacher, my whole mission was I'm here to create opportunities that I didn't have as a student. Like that would have opened my eyes to things that I didn't understand. And it's the same thing with my channel. The whole point is, if I can put myself out there, show the embarrassing things, and show people that you don't have to be amazing, you don't have to be perfect, you don't even have to be good to have fun, to do things, just like you were talking about. You want to encourage people to experience new things, to push their comfort zone, and I think that is something that I'm interested in too, but on a smaller scale. I always used to tell my kids, every time you push your comfort zone, it gets a little bigger, and you don't have to push very far, right? Stay in the bubble, or jump in and out, but you go on a ride to another county, you go on a ride to somewhere farther away, and then the next thing you know, you're going to do an 8-hour ride, and you're going to camp, and you're going to come back, and your comfort zone gets much wider. Like last year, I rode from the tip of Baja, Cabo, all the way to northern Vancouver Island. And if you told me 4 years ago that I was going to do that and I wouldn't be too scared to think about even trying it, I would not have believed you.
Yeah.
And I want people who are where I was to be able to get to where I am always.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, I just think that's one of the most special things about you, and it's what I think is great about your channel is it's inclusive of anybody who wants to try anything motorcycle related, and you see a lot of these guys that are doing these like extreme things on Tenerés, on like ridge lines and cliff edges, and the reality is, You know, a lot of it is just friends getting together and getting out and riding and having a great time and realizing that they can do it. And that's something that I think you do so, so well. Uh, to wrap up, because we've hit our 45 minutes right here, I
Wow, that's
guess,
nice.
what is one thing about you other than your history with being a teacher in English literature and theater that people might not know about you?
Wow. This is the tell a fun fact about yourself
Uh-huh.
interview question. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it was on your list in case I needed to get to that. Um, I the biggest one that always surprises. Well, okay, actually, have I told you my Warp Tour story where I was
Nope, but I'm excited.
where I got plucked from the crowd to sing
Yes. Oh yeah.
on
Yeah,
stage with
but
the
please
Dropkick
talk.
Murphys? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's basically the story. It was we were there, Dropkick Murphys, top two bands of all time. I was a
Yeah.
big punk guy, like in my early, like a lot of time at punk shows, like Bad Religion, my favorite band of all time. Like I
Yeah.
have tinnitus because I went to all those shows and earplugs aren't punk, which I wear now.
Yeah.
Thank you, motorcycling, for teaching me the value of that. But
Yeah.
we and at Warp Tour back then it was two stages and they would alternate, right? So
Yep.
we knew the Dropkicks were up for next, so we just went to the other stage and stood there the whole time the band on the other side was playing. So when they came out, we were front row, like right at
Yeah.
the rail. And they had this kid up there, like a 10-year-old kid that was supposed to sing this song, Barroom Hero, with them. And he got scared. He chickened out. And so they were like, "Well, does anyone else want to do it? Does anyone
Yeah.
else know the words?" And like I'm like, my buddy
Yeah.
Matt's like pointing at me. I was wearing a "Kiss Me, I'm Shit Faced" shirt, which is
Yeah, of course.
one of their
Yeah.
songs.
Mm-hmm.
And they pulled me up and did really good for the first verse. Realized I've always mumbled through part of the second verse, that I don't actually know the words. Threw me a little, but I recovered by the end. At one point,
Nice.
they brought out a broom, like they were sweeping me off the stage,
Nice.
and it
Oh my
turns out
God.
Matt was pointing the whole time. He's like, "The lyrics are on the stage." I don't know the lyrics.
Oh.
But
Eh.
pulled out the end. It was a good time, fantastic. I did not stage dive because the audience was 10 feet away. And last time I stage dove, I went right to the floor because, well, I'm a hefty gentleman. Um, so that was fun. That's a good time. I have pictures, so I can prove it. But that's a fun
Nice.
story. And then my backup fun story is always I won Corvallis Idol karaoke competition, and Grace didn't know that I was a karaoke person
I
until literally
didn't.
yesterday.
Yeah, and now we're going karaoke on Friday and I'm fucking stoked about it.
Yeah, I used to go
Yeah.
2 nights a week. It was my thing, bro.
God, so good. So good. Well, Ben, where can everybody find you and follow along with your kick-ass YouTube page, as well as just all of the wonderful excursions and outings you are up to these days?
Well, I'm incredibly fortunate to co-host a podcast called the Internet Writing Buddies with the effervescent Graceful Renegade. So you can find us wherever podcasts are sold, and on my YouTube channel, the video versions. My YouTube channel is Dork in the Road, where it's all about my mission is to inspire, educate, and empower others to have adventures of their own. Motorcycling, camping, all that stuff. I'm on Instagram. I suck at Instagram. I need to take lessons from Grace. I just don't go on there very much. Hate typing on my phone. I'm such a freaking Gen Xer that way. But a Dork in the Road on Instagram. I do make a TikTok occasionally, Dork in the Road, and Facebook. I'm Dork in the Road. But it's getting to the point where if you Google Dork in the Road, you find me 90% of the time.
Yeah,
which is good because I don't want anyone stealing my name now that I have it pretty well established.
love it. Well, it's been delightful to interview you today, Ben. Very delightful. I hope everybody learned something new, especially the karaoke thing. That is probably my favorite new facts about Ben. But I guess in the meantime, live wild, ride free.
And don't forget to be excellent to each other.
Bye.
Thank you.